What happens when a wealthy single father discovers a waitress helping his mute son speak for the first time? His next action not only changed the boy's life, but also rewrote the destiny of that stranger woman. A story that reaches into the depths of the heart is waiting for you to uncover. If you believe that love and compassion can heal every wound, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me where you're watching from. This story just might be what you need today. The wooden door opened softly. The little bell above tinkled once like a gentle sigh. James stepped in first, raindrops still clinging to his coat, his large hand gripping his son's. Noah, wrapped in an oversized hoodie pulled low over his head, pressed himself against his father, his gaze darting with wary alertness. The small diner wasn't crowded, yet the noise was enough to set the boy trembling, like an overstrained guitar string. Laughter erupted from a corner table, sharp as a hammer blow. A plate clattered to the floor in the kitchen, its crash echoing across the room. Noah flinched, then began to sway. A soft patter of applause built into a frantic rhythm. His lips quivered, soundless. His breath came rapid, his eyes wide with panic. James recognized it instantly. He knelt beside his son, wrapped an arm around his small shoulders, murmured, "It's okay, Noah. Daddy's here. Breathe, buddy. We'll get out of here soon." But Noah could not hear him, not with ears alone. His world had shattered into shards of piercing noise. His own screams rent the air, a high, wrenching sound. Then he collapsed to the floor, arms flailing, his small body twisting in primal terror. Heads turned, whispers circulated. Someone frowned. James tightened his grip, held Noah close, fought back a nameless ache, part shame, part helplessness. His heart constricted. He hated himself for not knowing how to calm his son. He hated the world for seeing them as oddities. Then, a voice emerged. Not loud, not hurried, just a whisper, soft as a breath. "Hello, little one." Clara, the young waitress with pale blonde hair tied high, freckles dancing across her cheeks, a tomato-stained apron, appeared. She said nothing to James. She simply knelt down to Noah's level, her eyes fixed solely on the boy. From her apron pocket, she drew a plastic card. On it, a smiling face. Below, the word, "calm." She held the card up gently, at Noah's eye line, with no rush, no pressure. "Like this," Clara whispered, placed her hand on her chest, inhaled deeply. Then she exhaled slowly, as deliberate as a falling leaf. She raised the card again and smiled, a warm, gentle smile, free of pity. Noah stilled. His eyes locked onto the smiling face as if it were the single thread keeping him from falling into the abyss. His hand slowed, his breath steadied, his lips pressed together. Clara then calmly produced a small blue rubber ball from her pocket, placed it before him. Noah looked. A moment, fleeting, yet enough to still the entire diner. James froze. A strange emotion surged within him, stunned, then anger. He didn't know why. Perhaps because he couldn't do what she did. Perhaps because the stranger dared to touch his son's world without permission. "What are you doing?" he snapped, his voice low and cutting. Clara looked up, startled. I'm just trying to help." "Don't touch my son." His tone was steel. The room fell silent. Clara rose slowly, her cheeks flushed. Yet her gaze never wavered. "I only want to help," she said, her voice steady despite a tremor. "He's frightened. I can see that." James swallowed hard, her words striking his pride like a slap. He hauled Noah to his feet, turned away from her, from everyone. Clara stood there in the fluorescent light, card still in hand, her eyes serene, a silent farewell. And they left, carrying with them another gathering storm within their hearts. The days that followed passed like nameless winds. Yet in James's mind, Clara's image never faded. The girl with pale blonde hair, gentle eyes, and patient hands had carved an indelible mark, not only on James's heart, but in Noah's small world. Noah, ordinarily silent, closed off like a door without a latch, began to change in ways that choked James's throat. Every time their car rolled past the little diner tucked around the corner, the boy pressed his face to the window, his eyes following with undisguised longing. James drove on in silence, feigning indifference, but each time he caught that look, his heart ached. It wasn't a glance seeking a place, it was seeking a person. One evening, when James entered Noah's room to turn out the light, he froze at the sight before him. Beneath the dim glow of the night lamp, Noah clutched a crumpled scrap of tissue paper. On it was a rough pencil drawing, a woman with her blonde hair tied high, a tiny boy holding her hand. Beneath the sketch, shaky but sincere letters read, "Clara and Noah." James said nothing. He sat on the edge of the bed, watching his little son drift toward sleep, his small fingers still clutching that drawing like a treasure. His chest felt constricted, a strange sensation, not quite jealousy, but a dull, persistent pain. Clara, a stranger who'd appeared in their lives for no more than minutes, had reached a part of Noah he, despite all his efforts, had never touched. He was Noah's father. He had been by his side from first steps, through every panic, every therapy session, every sleepless night. Yet now, some stranger's name, an outsider's brief presence, had become his son's place of safety? James clenched both fists, the silent torment rising within him. His pride roared. He refused to admit he needed anyone. He told himself their world, just the two of them, was enough. They'd made it this far without anyone else. Why break that balance now? But his reason knew. Their bond was fracturing. Noah changed gradually. Gone were the mornings spent blissfully stacking wooden blocks. Gone were the meaningless yet vibrant songs he'd once hummed. Now the boy simply sat by the window, clutching that crumpled napkin, his eyes hollow, no longer reflecting sunlight or the curiosity they once held. His world felt like a seashell, closing shut little by little. James watched helplessly as his son slipped beyond his grasp. Every effort dissolved in the silence he saw in Noah's eyes. No toy was colorful enough, no playground vast enough to draw him back. Everything grew quiet, painful. Then, within that quiet, James heard what he'd long denied. He was wrong. Not wrong for feeling angry, but wrong for letting fear and pride overshadow the truth. He had pushed away the only person capable of unlocking Noah's shell. Clara had done more than calm his son in the throes of panic. She was more than a kind stranger with a plastic card and a smile. She was the first to give Noah hope, the first to inspire him to draw, to write, to anticipate something beyond James. James looked at his son again. He still slept, but in that slumber there was no peace, only waiting, fragility, a void James himself had created. And James knew if he did nothing soon, he would lose his son in a way no father could bear. That Saturday morning was as cold as James's heart. He sat silently in the kitchen, cradling a cup of now lukewarm coffee, his gaze fixed on the small figure huddled by the window. Noah no longer stacked blocks, no longer hummed tunes. He simply clutched the crumpled scrap of paper, his empty eyes staring out as if waiting for a miracle. James could not bear it any longer. He sprang up, threw on his coat, grabbed his keys, and left himself with one thought. Enough. The car rolled through wet streets, the scent of earth and early rain lingering in the air. The diner emerged like an unhealed memory. James pushed through the door. The bell's tinkle shattered something inside him. He stepped in. The familiar aromas of pastries, coffee, and clinking cutlery greeted him. Yet everything halted when Clara looked up and saw him. She was wiping the counter. Her hand paused for a heartbeat, her gaze frozen, not angry, but guarded. James swallowed, his pulse drowning out his footsteps. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice hoarse and trembling. Clara did not answer at once. Then she nodded, gesturing toward a dimmer corner where the light was softer and privacy kinder. They sat facing one another, Clara with her arms folded, James with his fists clenched beneath the table. "Noah," he began, looking down, his voice quivering. "He hasn't been himself since that day. He misses you. Every day." Those words tore through his pride, each one carving away at the armor he still clung to. He drew a breath, met her eyes. "I was wrong. About you. About what you did that day. I'm asking you, please, spend some time with Noah. Not for me. For him." Clara studied him, her eyes no longer cold, only hesitant. In her mind flashed the image of that little boy, his eyes lighting like stars at the sight of her. She wasn't sure she could step back into that world, yet she knew if anyone was needed now, it was Noah. She nodded, softly as a breath. "Just one afternoon." James exhaled, relief lifting from his shoulders. He nodded. No more words needed. No more pleading required. That Sunday afternoon, Clara stood at James's front door, a canvas bag slung casually over one shoulder. Inside were picture cards, colored pencils, a small whiteboard, and patience enough to warm a fragile soul. James opened the door. She smiled gently, said nothing. But when Noah heard her voice, he sprang up like a coiled spring, racing to her as if he'd waited a lifetime. Clara sat on the rug, laid out her tools. At first, Noah only dared to sit nearby, timid. But with each picture card, each cue she guided him through, his eyes brightened. He pointed. He nodded. And then, like a miracle, he produced a small sound. A very small sound, but real. James stood in the kitchen doorway, his eyes never leaving them. His heart pounded, not with panic, but with something deeper, a bittersweet ache. He saw Noah opening up, yet he also recognized something he'd never admitted. He was jealous. Jealous of how Clara did what he'd tried all those years to achieve, breaking down the wall he'd never touched. Then the true miracle happened. Noah rose, ran over and tugged at James's sleeve. In his hand was the little whiteboard, the scrawled letters uneven but unmistakable. "Dad is home." James froze. He bent down, hugged his son fiercely. His chest tightened, silent tears traced his cheeks. In that moment, the world fell away, leaving only pure love and boundless gratitude. But as he held Noah, James's gaze drifted to Clara. She stood quietly, smiling. And he realized one more thing. He was afraid. Afraid that this woman was becoming an indispensable part of their lives. And he didn't know if he was ready for that. Dear viewers, take a moment to relax or grab a glass of water before the next unexpected twist. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always wonderful to see people joining us from around the world. Comment 1 if you enjoyed this story, so we can keep bringing you more. Clara's presence brought light into the house. A gentle light, not glaring, yet creeping into every silent corner of the place, where once there were only a father and son and nameless pauses. But not everyone saw it. Not everyone believed in that light. Margaret, James's sister, did not believe. She was sharp, logical, and had seen James fall too many times to accept anything easily. A poor waitress and a lonely millionaire? Sounds like cheap fiction, James. You need to be careful. She dropped those words one rainy afternoon, setting her teacup on the table with deliberate weight, as if to press her warning into the silence. James said nothing. He merely shook his head. But inside, that warning lingered. Not because he doubted Clara, but because he feared Margaret might be right. Margaret did not stop there. She hired a private investigator. To her, it was protecting the family. To James, an invasion. He did not know. Until one evening, an audio file appeared in his inbox. No explanation, no title, just a link. James clicked it, and Clara's voice came through, strange and chilling. He's wealthy. If I play this right, maybe I won't have to worry anymore. That was all, yet it shattered the ground beneath him. He sat frozen in his study, the lights off, only the computer's pale blue glow illuminating him. Each word was a blade, cutting through every beautiful memory he had of Clara. Her tilted smile, the look in her eyes when she watched Noah, the gentle way she smoothed his son's hair. It was as if a rough hand had stripped away the thin coat of paint on an old wall. He did not sleep that night, just sat and replayed the recording, over and over, until the words stopped sounding like sounds and became a living nightmare. The following Sunday, Clara entered as usual, her arm carrying a bag full of picture cards, a warm smile for Noah as he bounded out to meet her. The boy was like spring sunshine, joyful, pulling her inside. But this time, James did not stand back. He stepped into the living room, his gaze icy. Clara. She froze, smiled, but the smile died when she saw his face. James? We need to talk. She looked around, sensed something was wrong. What is it? James pulled out his phone, tapped once, and that voice filled their home again, echoing in the painful silence. Clara stood motionless, her face drained of color. No, that's not what I... You used my son to get to me, didn't you? James's voice was steel, not raised, but cutting deep. Clara shook her head, tears welled in her eyes, her voice trembled. No, that's not true, I didn't. Please leave. He did not shout, yet the words landed like thunder. Noah stood between them, confused. Looking first at his father, then at Clara, sensing something slipping away, he began to sob, his small hands clutching Clara's apron. Clara knelt, brushed away his tears, forced a trembling smile. You're so brave, Noah, don't ever forget that. She kissed his forehead, then stood. She looked at James, No accusation in her eyes, only sorrow. Without another word, she turned and walked away. The door closed gently behind her, but that soft click struck James's heart like a final hammer blow. And the house that had been warmed by her presence became silent once more, save for a little boy crying by the window, clutching his crumpled drawing like the last fragile hope, now extinguished. The days that followed drifted by like endless voids. Noah was no longer himself. The boy who once clapped his hands and giggled at each new symbol now sat in silence. He did not speak, did not signal, did not smile. He only sat by the window, clutching the crumpled napkin with its shaky drawing, a woman with blonde hair and a little boy holding hands. Clara and Noah. James watched his son. His heart felt crushed. The laughter that once warmed their home had died. The air was colder and emptier than any winter. He told himself he was doing the right thing, that he was protecting his child. Yet every night, he saw Noah curled beneath the covers, face pressed against that drawing, and he knew he had been wrong. One gray afternoon, scrolling absent-mindedly through his email, James received a message from Margaret. No words, only an attached audio file. His hand trembled as he hit play. Clara's voice sounded out, this time uncut, not icy, not false, but real, clear and heartfelt, like a breath. I don't care about money. Noah, that boy, when he smiles, I know I'm doing the right thing. And James, he loves his son above all else. I will never betray that. James slumped into his chair, as if someone had struck him in the chest. Those words were more than the truth. They were judgment on his doubt, on the fear that drove him to push away what mattered most. He hadn't just hurt Clara. He had shattered his own son's trust and hope. No more hesitation. No more delay. James scooped up Noah, wrapped him tight in his coat, then raced out the door. The car cut through misty country roads. James had no address, no plan, only one goal: to find her. They stopped in small towns, checked every diner, every coffee shop, every gas station. Have you seen a blonde woman with a gentle smile helping children? James asked over and over, while Noah, silent yet more alert than ever, clutched the napkin in his hand. As if he knew, as if he believed his father could make things right. Night fell as they reached a quiet town near Charleston. The main street was deserted. Streetlights cast pale amber pools. And then James saw it. A little bakery with a weathered wooden sign. Sweet Haven. Through the fogged window, golden light glowed like a candle. Inside, a familiar figure stood wiping a table. Clara. Her apron dusted with flour, her hair tied high, exhaustion and tenderness in her gentle expression. James's heart thundered. He grabbed Noah's hand and pushed open the door. The bell's chime sounded faintly. Clara looked up. Her eyes froze. "Clara!" echoed Noah. No hesitation, no whisper, but a true shout of joy. The boy let go of his father's hand, raced across the bakery, arms wide open. Clara dropped her tray, flour scattered across the floor. But she did not care. She knelt, opened her arms. Noah dove into her embrace. "Clara," he repeated, his laughter chime clear. Tears streamed down Clara's cheeks before she could wipe them away. She held him as if afraid he might vanish if she let go. James stepped forward, stood behind them, his eyes red. "Please forgive me," he croaked, the words stuck in his throat. "I didn't trust you. I destroyed everything. But I beg you, please stay." Clara met his gaze, tears still glistening. Then a small smile bloomed, just enough to draw James back into the light. In that moment, James dropped to his knees beside Clara and Noah. He took her hand, her flower-dusted palm warm and impossible to release. "Will you marry me?" he whispered. No grand flourish, no proper kneeing, just the plea of a man who'd lost nearly everything and wanted only to keep what remained. Clara laughed through her tears, nodded. No words needed. The bakery lights glowed warmer, and for the first time in many long months, James felt their home return, amid old wooden tables, flour dust, and cinnamon's scent. There, the three of them, at last, belonged to one another. Spring burst forth across the Georgia countryside like a gentle melody of rebirth. Fields stretched wide, awash in golden dandelions, wild lavender purple intertwined with the fragile white of daisies. The breeze carried the scent of fresh earth, and amid that scene, a small farm emerged like a simple dream, the new home of James, Clara, and Noah. The weathered house, with its wooden shingle roof and white picket fence, was where they began anew. But it was the old barn behind it that held true magic. Clara had transformed the dusty space into a little center called Bright Beginnings, a place to support children with special needs. Hand-painted walls gleamed with color. Every corner became its own sky for those who'd struggled to find their voice in the noisy world beyond. And Noah, the boy who once hid behind his father's arm, now raced through the fields like the wind. Each step he took was a small miracle. He signed naturally, spoke simple words, his eyes sparkled like morning sun, and most precious of all, his smile, one that never faded. Their wedding took place beneath an ancient oak, its leaves whispering blessings. No loud music, no grand rows of chairs, only birdsong, the scent of blooms, and those they loved most. Clara walked forward, barefoot, her white dress drifting lightly in the breeze, a wildflower crown, picked by Noah at dawn, resting on her head. James stood waiting, his gaze gentle as late afternoon light. Noah clasped both their hands, his face radiant. Then in that quiet moment he lifted his hand, signing a simple phrase that stopped Clara's breath. "Mother." Clara sank to her knees, arms enfolding her son, tears streaming even as her smile remained. She echoed the sign, then whispered, "Thank you." James knelt beside them, his arms wrapped around them both. In that embrace, he felt something he'd never known: unconditional peace. No more distance, no more fear. Just three souls who'd finally found one another. That evening, they sat together on the farmhouse porch, the sky vast and deep like the ocean, stars glittering above. Noah, wearied by the day, dozed between them, his head resting on his mother's shoulder, his small hand clutching his father's finger. Suddenly, a streak of light cut across the sky, a shooting star blazing through. Clara tilted her head, eyes fixed on its path. "A wish?" James asked softly. Clara shook her head, her eyes gleaming. "No, a promise." James squeezed her hand gently, as if to carve that promise into his heart. "No matter what storms come, we'll hold on to this." Clara nodded. "Our family, even when it's broken, will always be mended by love." They sat there for a long time, only the wind, the hum of insects, and the steady breathing of the child dreaming peaceful dreams. The story of James, Clara, and Noah isn't a fairy tale. It didn't begin with magic. It began with hurt, loss, and fear. But from those shattered pieces, they built something more beautiful, a home. Because family isn't perfection. Family is choosing to stay, to love, to forgive, no matter how often wounds bleed. If you're lost, if you've ever lost faith, remember there's always another beginning waiting for you. And if this story touches your heart, subscribe to 30 Millionaire Stories, where we share real journeys of faith, human connection, and the miraculous power of second chances. Because sometimes, one outstretched hand, given at just the right moment, is enough to change an entire life. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always wonderful to see viewers tuning in from around the world. Comment 1 if you enjoyed this story, so we can keep bringing you more.